And Beth, you can tell me when to advance slides.
Great, thank you. So just to open, really quick introductions, and we'll keep that brief. My name is Beth Kessler. I work for the Oregon Council on Developmental Disabilities. And I've had lots of opportunities to learn about the Charting the LifeCourse framework and how that relates to person-centered thinking and person-centered planning, how it relates to helping people envision and pursue the lives that they want, identify the barriers that exist for them in pursuing those lives, and helping to identify what we can do about that together. So that's just a really quick, who am I? And I'm sharing this time with you all today with Caitlin and Carrie, if you guys want to just do a quick introduction as well.
Sure. Thank you, Beth. I'm Caitlin Shockley. I've been your co-host for most of these sessions during the summer learning series, but I am the policy manager for ODDS and have the great pleasure of being able to partner with Beth in her role at the council as the co-leader of our community of practice here in Oregon that is, thinking about how we can embed the Charting the LifeCourse framework into our system and into kind of the everyday things that our system does for people at all levels. And I am a LifeCourse ambassador, and just here again with great gratitude for all of the work that you're doing, and excited to spend this time with you and talk about this framework this morning. Carrie?
I don't have much to add to that. I'm Carrie Salahiamin. I am the Child and Family Support Coordinator for ODDS. I'd previously worked at the council with Beth doing the Charting the LifeCourse work there. And now I work at ODDS doing the Charting the LifeCourse work with Caitlin. So I'm excited to be here. And I'm also a Charting the LifeCourse ambassador.
Thank you. So since I am so pleased we have so many people on today, in lieu of formal introductions, we have a quick poll just to get a sense of why people are here. And so you can get a sense of the tone that we want to set with our presentation today.
I'm just going to give it about 15 more seconds.
Thank you all for participating in our poll. I appreciate it. Sounds like most people here are curious about what this is. And a few of you are being really honest with us about some other things, which I appreciate. And it also seems like a few of you maybe have heard about this framework before, or you really have enjoyed person-centered planning and person-centered tools and how these things relate to each other. So thank you for that. I'm so glad it made a few people laugh. Okay, so to really dive in, I'm going to start a little heavy and then we're going to get lighter. But why do we do this work? And what impact can we have on people's lives? Why in this work are there all these efforts to do things differently and to innovate and to grow? It's because of the visual in front of you. With a really amazing intention for decades of supporting people, we still see outcomes for people with disabilities that look a little bit like this. So this was a study that looked at people with developmental disabilities and who they have in their lives. So what you see primarily is a lot of green. And that was other people who share the same diagnosis that they do. Then maybe your eye sees these stick figures in black that represent paid human service professionals, paid people who show up in their lives that way. Then maybe you travel to red and you see family. You travel down to the bottom and you see other citizens and friends. Now, the people with disability were the ones who answered this question. So how did they define friends? How did they define other citizens? How did they define family? Entirely up to them, right? But now I want you to imagine just for a second what your picture looks like. Maybe you can even close your eyes for a second and picture like a small room and bring all of the people in your life into that small room. Something we would never do right now, right? Bring all of the people into a small room in our heads. And then we ask all of the people in that room who are paid to be there, please leave. Now, hopefully, for most of us, we still have a fairly full room. But we all have people who are paid to be in our lives, and they are invaluable, right? I could not have gotten through the last 18 months without some of the people who have paid roles in my life. A doctor, right? A mental health counselor, a babysitter, a teacher, a service coordinator. Whoever that is, we all have people who have a paid role in our lives, and that role is invaluable. And hopefully, your little imaginary room in your head is not currently vacant. But for many people with developmental disabilities, it would be. Now, beyond the fact that our goal is that people aren't defined by disability, because being defined by a diagnosis shrinks our world, right? Having a diagnosis doesn't. Being defined by that diagnosis does. When the diagnosis determines who we spend time with and how people show up in our life, that shrinks our world. So even beyond that feeling heartbreaking for people, right? And us wanting to shift that mentality and change that for people, there's another set of research on our next slide that drives it home for me. Now, human services primarily get federal and state dollars, right? That's how they're funded. And human services that bring in federal dollars, the job of human services is to support health and safety. Now, how do we define health and safety? Where do we fit in changing this diagram or the people in someone's imaginary little room? This was a study out of Brigham Young University, and it looked at indicators of long life. What is it that determines the strongest indication of a person living a long life? And they looked at things like, do you get your flu vaccine regularly? Do you have access to clean air? Do you smoke? And the two indicators most strongly tied to long life are social integration and meaningful relationships. More than clean air. Social integration and meaningful relationships. Now, that might hit a little bit harder right now than it would have 19 months ago. But if long life if an indication of long life is social integration and meaningful relationships, then our role in human services to support health and safety means health and safety that supports social integration and meaningful relationships. Health and safety that grows and amplifies social integration and meaningful relationships. Health and safety that changes who is in someone's room when they close their eyes and they imagine the small room of who is in their life. So that it changes the diagram we just looked at. Can you go back to that one for a second, Caitlin? Those bottom two and the top one, right? Social integration is knowing other citizens. Meaningful relationships are family and friends, as defined by you. So let's move on for a second. How do we change this? We've had decades of really good intention, and we have built structures that have moved us from these circles on the left, right? The natural state of being of all humans. Humans are born into a family, whether they remain in that family or not, however that family is defined. Biologically, we are born from a family, and that family exists, and the context of that family is influenced by the community in which it lives. And we have built structures and systems that move us to the middle. Person-centered structures and systems with really, really good intention that we're going to provide the services that someone needs within the context of their family and their community where they live. Because as humans, we all exist within context. We are constantly influencing and being influenced by the closest people around us, however we define family, and the community in which we live.
I want to
Now, if
add,
you look at,
go ahead.
yes, please.
Just that reiterating the best intentions of how we've kind of landed in the middle here where services are surrounding a person, and thinking, I just want to remind us of our own history here in Oregon, thinking about deinstitutionalization, the closing of Fairview, and how that was successful. How could we make that happen? And that was by bringing supports directly to a person and making it focused on them and following them wherever they went, to go and live in community, to have more semblance of a whole life like anyone else, like their neighbors and community members. So through those good intentions, we have built this system of support that's kind of surrounding and even at times insulating a person from perhaps their family and community.
Thank you. So how do we get away from that first diagram we looked at of the little stick figure people? This visual on the right maintains that a person exists within the context of their family, defined by them and the community where they live. But then we see these stars, and the stars touch the person, and the stars touch the family, and the stars exist in the community where they live. And that star represents something called the integrated support star. And we're going to talk more about what that star is and how we might use this concept of the star when we're thinking about our role in people's lives, when we're thinking about our own lives, when we're thinking about planning or problem solving, or even just mapping what is and where we are, right? But at its core, the title, Integrated Supports, is the idea that support can be found in different ways, but all of the support you find in your life has to integrate with the other support that exists in your life, right? That's how we get away from insulating, or becoming a new barrier between a person and their context. So, charting the LifeCourse framework. Now, there are tools that exist in this framework, and we're going to talk about some of those. But what I'm talking about right now is just the ideas. The framework, any framework, is a set of core ideas. What we do with those ideas is endless creativity, right? There are some ways other people have already started using or tried using charting the LifeCourse, and we'll talk about some of that. But I'm less focused on what people do with it. I'm more interested in understanding how these core ideas could impact the way that we think about the role we play as we interact with other people, about the role that our system plays when people are interacting with that system, and about the role that slowing down our thinking, slowing down even our problem solving, could change our outcomes in our own lives. The guiding principle of this framework is that all people have the right to live, love, learn, work, play, and pursue their life aspirations in their community. It's not a framework about people with developmental disabilities, right? And in the description of this session, we didn't say this is about using this for people with disabilities. We said this is about a framework that helps us think about our lives and how we support other people's lives. It is all people. I would argue it's even all organizations. So the core idea here, one of them, is that people exist within context. So if you give that one click, Caitlin, we all exist within context. We are constantly influencing the people around us. We are constantly being influenced by the people around us. And every interaction one human has with another human has the power to shift the path of their life for both humans. Every interaction between one human and another has the opportunity to support a positive life trajectory and prevent negative life events. But within that context of family, if you click it one more time, we also exist within the context of community. Now, how do we talk about the context of our lives, the context of the places where we live? We've tried in systems, right, coming up with lists and categories of all the aspects of life. In this framework, the core principle is the idea of life domains, right, which is basically that, all the aspects of life. How do we think about the context of our lives? We could look at our daily life and our employment. What does our day-to-day look like? We could think about social and spirituality. How do we connect with other humans? How do we connect with what feels meaningful to us in our lives? We could think about how we show up as contributing members, citizenship and advocacy. We could think about healthy living. Now, that's not health and safety, it's healthy living, right? We could think about community living. How are we connected with other people where we live? What role do we have? What do we access? Where do we go? And we can think about safety and security. Now, one thing I love about this organization of life is that healthy living and safety and security are two distinct groups. And why do I care? Because there is more to safety and security than health. I have a friend whose daughter has a developmental disability, and this was years ago. She used to ride the bus to school. And part of what kept her safe was her peers on the bus who notified her mom one day that the bus driver had been bullying this little girl. Those peers were what kept her safe in that situation. All of these aspects of life connect to each other. It's impossible for me to make a change in my daily life or my job without it directly impacting my engagement in my community or directly impacting my social life, which might directly impact my safety, which might directly impact my health, right? Domains are great because you can zero in on one and you can have a really deep conversation about one aspect of life, but then it forces you to bounce around. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later. So then this next ring, you see 3. This is called the 3 buckets of need. All humans need 3 kinds of things. We sometimes need discovery and navigation. We need information. We need to learn something. Sometimes we need connection and networking. We need other humans. We need people. We need people with lived experience, either because they're experiencing what we're experiencing, or they used to, and they aren't anymore, or they've done something else and have something to share with us, right? They have expertise we might not have, but we need connection to humans. And sometimes what we need is stuff. We need goods or services. We need something tangible. We've been really good for decades at looking at that green bucket and having conversations about the stuff. But all humans need all 3 buckets. I need all 3 buckets, and I need them all the time. Sometimes I need more than one. How do we meet need? This is where we get into the integrated support star. 5. And you can click on it again, Caitlin. So that star, sometimes I imagine in my head, I hold my hand up. I can't not do it. I imagine the 5 fingers on my hand. Because if we're thinking about how we meet needs, and all people have needs, how we meet them, there are 5 ways to meet them. Sometimes the way to meet a need is within that person. They have a personal strength or an asset. They have it within themselves. Sometimes it's relationships, it's other people in their life. Sometimes it's technology. Sometimes it's community resources, things that are available because of where someone lives. And sometimes it's eligibility specific resources, resources that exist because of something about that human. Now, the awesome thing about integrated supports is that any one of those points of the star can be used to grow any other point of that star. I've also heard this referred to as a colorful life. It's human nature to feel a sense of safety when you feel there's a safety net under you, right? You can do really hard things when you feel like there is a safety net under you. And often, what we've done with really good intention is we've focused on that green. What services are available? How can we bolster that safety net by looking at the green kind of support? Now, any one of us that doesn't have a colorful life here is incredibly vulnerable. If most of the support in my life is green, and something about my eligibility changes, because something about me changes, or because something about what exists or is funded changes, or because something changes about the capacity of accessing what is available or funded. If something changes and all of the support in my life, my whole safety net is green, my safety net is gone, and I am immediately in crisis. I am scared. I don't make great decisions when I'm scared. And I definitely can't continue to take wonderful steps toward this vision of the life that I have when I feel like I'm scared and I have no safety net. Now, if I have a colorful life and my safety net is made up of all 5 points on this star, and I know that, something changes and the green drops away for a little while, or something changes and one of my relationships drops away for a little while, I have 4 other colors to fall back on. My safety net is not gone. I am a safer person. And it might be really, really hard or traumatic, that change in my life. But maybe I'm less likely to immediately find myself in crisis. So how do we think about services? How do we think about that point where we're interacting with other people as an opportunity to leverage the green, to identify and map the other 4, right? Help people be aware that their safety net maybe is more colorful than they realized. And then leverage the green point on the star to grow the other 4 colors. Makes for a much stronger safety net. Now, when does this come into play, right? If you click one more time, Caitlin. The next principle of this framework is life stages. The reason, again, that I love this framework is it's not age. Age ignores my context. Age is only about me as an isolated human. Nothing in this framework is about me as an isolated human. Everything is about me within the context of my life. My life stage is all about the context of my life. I'm an adult. I'm in the adult stage of life. Now, I also have aging parents. Aging parents about to make a huge move out of their home. It might be that I'm actually in the aging stage of life because the thing most dynamically impacting my day-to-day right now, or my stress or my planning, or what supports exist for me right now, is influenced by that aging stage of life. Now, I also have a 5-year-old. Maybe my day-to-day is most dramatically in early childhood. Maybe that's my stage of life. And maybe my stage of life changes depending on the context of the people around me, or the context of what's happening in the world. I may have been solidly in my adult stage of life and starting to have some planning conversations with my aging parents, and then school closed. My stage of life was then immediately dominated by early childhood. But life stage, conversations about life stage can be a much more meaningful conversation with a human, because we start to understand what's influencing them. What does their context look like? How might that be impacting the decisions that they need to make, or their motivations, And how do we talk about life stage to help someone get out of solely seeing today? When things are really, really hard, it's human nature to start to envision your future as a repeat of today over and over and over again. We can use this idea of life stages to help draw us out of that natural human response and start to think about whatever life stage we're in. The context is going to change and we're going to evolve forward. I will not always have a 5-year-old. Even if what's hard stays hard, her life stage is going to evolve, which is going to evolve mine. Life stages are also about life experiences, right? The other side of life stages is about the experiences we accumulate over time and how those experiences influence us and impact us. So the last principle of this framework is trajectory. If you click on it one more time, Caitlin, it should draw us an arrow.
I can see the arrow. It's just very dark for some reason.
Okay,
so I think it
thank
already
you.
popped up.
So trajectory. Our lives are going to evolve. Our life experiences are going to accumulate over time. And we're going to end up somewhere. Trajectory is about understanding our motivation. Where do we want to end up? And maybe sometimes it's easier to say, where do we want to avoid ending up? And then it challenges us to look at the past and say, what life experiences have we already had that are influencing us? Because we had experiences we never want to have again, or we have experiences we want more of. Caitlin.
Sorry about that. I just want to call folks' attention to the trajectory, as I think something for those of you that have had some interaction with person-centered thinking and person-centered planning. I think this is maybe more familiar than you might realize when we're thinking about setting a vision for the future and how we, in order to make a plan about someone's life or to support someone in making a plan about their life, we have to start with a destination of some kind. So the LifeCourse trajectory is very much in line with that same concept of setting this destination and also intentionally thinking about, you know, where we don't want to go, the places we want to avoid, and how the decisions we make along the way in different stages of life and in different domains of life either take us closer to that destination, they help us along that path towards our trajectory, or they take us further away from that. And I kind of think about all of this, which these are really all of the LifeCourse principles all here on your screen to kind of take in all at once as distinct aspects of how we can support a person to build a plan, that their trajectory is their why. It's that vision for the future and that vision of what we want to avoid. The domains, that citizenship and advocacy, daily life and employment, healthy living, that's really where and when, along with the life stages. So where someone is in their life and when this vision for the future shows up, when it intersects with who they are as a person right now in their context. The buckets, goods and services, discovery and navigation, and connection and networking are what? Those are the things that someone needs in order to move closer towards that destination, to move along their trajectory in the context of where they are in life. And then the integrated star, technology, personal gifts and assets, relationships, eligibility, specific services, that is how they can succeed in moving along their trajectory towards that vision for a good life. So the why, the where, the when, the what, and the how. That helps me sort of put it into context and think about how that might plug into processes like the individual support plan process that are familiar to all of us.
Absolutely. Thank you. Great point, Caitlin. And I said, sorry, if you go back just for a second, I said earlier that one of the things I love about this framework is it slows down our thinking. Even outside of planning with another human, right? Thinking about your own life right now. It is kind of natural human inclination when you identify a challenge, when you're having an experience you don't want more of, or maybe you have an experience you want more of and you want to plan, right? How do I do that? We tend to jump in our thinking from what is the challenge to what are the solutions I can currently imagine as possible. And then we pick one. Maybe that solves our problem. But this framework says, but maybe it doesn't move you closer to where you want to end up in the future. Maybe unintentionally it moves you closer to what you didn't want. But we identified a problem and we chose a solution out of the ones we could currently imagine were possible. What else could we possibly do? This framework slows us down. And to Caitlin's point, it asks us first to think about why we're trying to solve a problem. What's our motivation? What is it we either want or want to avoid? And what past experiences have we had that help us understand why we want that? Why we want to avoid this other thing? Then maybe we think about the 3 buckets. What is it we would need in order to get what we want and avoid what we don't want? And then how do we meet those needs? The star. What support currently exists in my life in each of those 5 points that could help me meet my needs, get where I want to be and avoid what I don't want? And then maybe in that star, what other support could help me fill in the gaps? How can I meet my needs? So now this next one, what are we doing right now? You can click it again. Now, I can't do show of hands because we're not in person. How many of you, if I could see your hands, I'm going to raise mine, can look at this equation on the screen and tell me the answer?
You're funny.
If you click again, Caitlin. That would be me. Maybe that's some of you, including the person who thinks I'm funny. Thank you for that. But honestly, this is what we do. We do assessments, right? We do assessments to determine needs. So I've just assessed all of you. I've assessed your math skills. I've determined you can't do that equation. And so what I'm going to give you is the tool that meets your need. And it's not even like a regular little calculator. It's one of those fancy, really big, heavy calculators that can do all kinds of formulas and equations that I never really understood. There's a reason I didn't go into anything mathematical. Now, probably very few of you would like to carry around one of those giant calculators every day. And I'm going to go a step further and say, how many of you have to solve an equation like that every day? And even one step further, if you click it again, Caitlin, how many of you have something you carry around that maybe looks like that has a calculator on it? Because we all have to do math sometimes. You pay a bill, you figure out tip on a check, You split a check if you go out to eat. There are lots of reasons we do have to do math in our lives. And there is a support that exists to help us fill in the gaps when we have to do it. But we don't always facilitate that kind of thinking when we're looking at formal systems. We want to, but sometimes our practices or our policies aren't designed that way. What they're designed to do is do an assessment that identifies need, and then identify services or supports that meet those needs. But motivation drives our decision-making. What we need depends on our context. It depends on what it is we care about, what it is we're trying to achieve, what it is we want to avoid. Only we can identify what we need once we know what is our motivation for changing something. Are we trying to avoid something that we didn't want? Are we trying to get more of something we do want? What were our past experiences that influence our definition of what we want and what we don't want? We can't really have a conversation about need without having a conversation about context. What's our why? If you click again, Caitlin, this next image is another version of those 3 buckets of need. Needs are not services. What we need is not solely defined by what assessments tell us we can't do alone without support. There are 3 kinds of need. The need for navigation and discovery, understanding something, learning about something, building skills. The need for connecting and networking, the need for human connection, and the need for tangible stuff. Sometimes what we need is tangible. It's a service, it's a thing, it's a tool. But we have to tease apart what is service eligibility determination and what is need. Then, to Caitlin's point, we can have conversations about motivation, what someone's why. We can have conversations about vision for the future and where we're trying to go or what we're trying to avoid, where have we been, what have we learned from that. We can have conversations about what someone needs to pursue their vision, to avoid what they don't want, that honors and acknowledges where they've been. And then we can think about when those needs show up. So the next one, we can use these other principles, these other ideas like life domains to think about when those needs show up. We could think about life stages, and we're going to show you that in a second. So we can talk about when those needs show up in someone's life, which acknowledges and incorporates their context. But we also talked about life experiences, right? And how our life experiences build and compound over time and take us somewhere. But often we don't have conversations about experiences. We have conversations about things or places or skill development. So the life domains challenges us to think a little bit about experiences. Caitlin, do you want to take over here?
Sure. I think right now we're all in this context of meeting people virtually, of maybe not seeing many of our family and friends for some time, for 19 months, even longer. If it had been, since the previous holiday or another celebration or family gathering that you had way before the pandemic came to Oregon. But let's think about, if you can, imagine meeting someone for the first time in a place that you feel comfortable and safe and at ease to actually strike up a conversation and get to know them a little bit. Maybe you've had this experience with a new person or on your caseload that you've had to introduce yourself to and get to know them a little bit better, with a new provider that you're working with in the context of your job. Maybe a new colleague that has joined your team during this COVID-19 pandemic, where you haven't had the chance to meet them in person, but you have had the opportunity to gather with them on Zoom or Skype or over the phone and get to know them a little bit, to tell them a little bit about yourself and ask them about themselves. So what are the types of things that you talk about? What kinds of questions do you ask someone to get to know them for the first time? And what kind of information do you share about yourself when you're meeting someone for the first time? And I'm going to ask y'all to type in the chat an answer to that question. So what's something you want to know about someone when you meet them for the first time, or what's something that you would naturally share about yourself? And if you'd like to speak, then you can raise your hand and we can call on you as well. Okay, this is coming in fast. So you have teenagers, so talking about that, the life stage that you're in with your family, your pets that are important to you, where you live, where you like to get your coffee, places you like to go, where you're from. So maybe where you were born or where you grew up, wanting to know where they grew up, see if you have something in common, your hobbies, the ways you like to spend your time, where they live, how they're doing. That's an important question to ask right now. How was your day? Absolutely.
Don't forget the dog lovers.
Yes.
Lots of dog lovers.
Lots of new
in.
dog owners too during this
Yes.
past 18 months or so. Fishing. How you approach working with kids, your philosophy. That's great. So maybe things that are influenced by your life experience, by your education, your family. Candace, the dog. Yes, it's true. Candace does love dogs. Interests, Girl Scouts. Yeah.
Not just dog, all dogs.
Oh, yeah,
Come on,
dogs.
Caitlin, you know that.
Dogs. I know this about you. Cars. Okay, thank you so much. I muted myself on accident there. Okay, so really everyone, whether they have a disability or not, has to figure out what we're going to do during the day, has to think about our life day to day, and where we live, what we do to stay healthy and safe, the areas of life that are important to us, the areas of life that we don't have yet that we need to open new doors towards our vision for the future. And these life domains are really just what we do every day, what's important to us, our school, education, employment, volunteering, routines, and life skills. Those are all parts of daily life and employment. So that day-to-day experience that we all have, where we go to school, what we do for a living, how we spend our free time, the routines that are important to us, and again, the life skills that we have throughout, that we utilize throughout the day and we might share with others. Community living, where we live, where someone else lives, their living options that might be available to them in their community, home modifications or accessibility needs that we need to think about in order to access community living, transportation that's available in our community or not available in our community. Those were all things that I heard you saying in the chat when you're just naturally thinking about what it would be like to make a new friend or meet a new colleague. Just the types of things you would talk about naturally upon that first interaction. We think about social and spirituality domains, so friendships, relationships, our leisure activities, our personal networks based on our hobbies or interests that you all mentioned, your dog park maybe, or other clubs or community groups that you're a part of, maybe your faith community. Healthy living, how we're staying well, the kinds of healthcare that we might need to access, medical care, behavioral health care, our nutrition, general wellness, maybe fitness classes, whether we can afford the care that we need, our prescription drug access, so many aspects of healthy living. And then distinct from that, as Beth mentioned earlier, safety and security. What do we do in an emergency? Do we feel safe in the community that we live in? Do we understand our legal rights? Do we understand legal issues that we may face day to day? What about for people with disabilities, alternatives to guardianship? So guardianship and those other options, those are all components of that domain around safety and security that we all think about in our lives. And then advocacy and engagement. So our choices and roles in our community, how we might set goals for ourselves and others, the responsibility that we have day to day in our community, in our family, our leadership opportunities, our opportunities for peer support and to lead and train and support other people through what we've learned in our own life experience. Really using charting the life course, using this principle can help you evaluate where you are now and next steps or experiences that can lead you towards that good life, that can keep you focused on your trajectory toward that positive vision for the future by thinking about all of these areas of life, what's maybe missing, where we have a lot of strength, and where we don't, and where we need to build more supports. And domains are in context. The life domain of citizenship and advocacy will look very different for an infant or toddler than it might look for a transition age youth or an adult. So that matters. And the life course framework is really all about taking these principles, these big ideas, and owning them and using them with as much flexibility as makes sense so that they work for a person, honoring their context. So honoring where they are, what their family is like, the stage of life that they're in, and what's important to them. So what do we experience, for example, when we look at daily life and employment during each stage of life? Do we think that daily life and employment as a domain, as an area of life that's important to many of us now, and I think most of us are in that adult stage that are here today, but how could that show up for an infant or toddler? So let's take a look at some examples of how we can start setting the stage and building that life trajectory from the earliest part of life, really that stage of prenatal and infancy, so that we can be on that trajectory towards that vision for a good life. So even young infants and toddlers might be playing with toys and pretending to do the things they see the older people in their life doing, the things they see their siblings or others that are in childcare programs with them, their parents, their other family members. They're observing and starting to understand maybe the day-to-day routine that they see in their family. And in early childhood, there are more childcare experiences, things that they're doing in preschool. Maybe there's jobs assigned to them, being the line leader, being the cleaner upper person, various things that are assigned to them in preschool that are ways for a young child to model and explore daily life and employment as a domain in their life. Making choices, what color shirt you want to wear today, what you want for lunch, when do you want to have your snack? Do you want to eat your snack at this table or that table? Testing some boundaries, pushing limits. I think any of us that have young children in our lives are very aware of the boundaries that are tested again and again and again. But all of that is about, making some mistakes, testing something and seeing sort of where the limit really is and what they can get away with. That's all an important part of learning how to exist in this domain. New routines that are coming into their life as a result of attending a childcare program, going to preschool, maybe new experiences that the family is taking on, and starting to do some simple chores around the house. So these are, again, just some examples to think about how this domain can apply even in these early stages of life.
And I really love, Caitlin, how these prompts kind of get us away from what we typically do, which is like, what are we seeing a child do independently and not independently? That's entirely about skill acquisition, right? Or it's about being defined and perceived by limitations related to diagnosis. These prompts are about the experiences that they're starting to accumulate as young children, right? So it shifts us toward this idea of life experiences, which is a much more dynamic and also hopeful conversation.
Yes. And I mean, I want to encourage everyone here today to think big and broad about this framework and to not be limited into the examples that we share with you today. But even this, to me, thinking about the context of planning, again, I always go back to that. What does a person's day look like? What are other kids that are in the similar life stage doing? And how can integrated supports, for example, help them do these things? How can they make sure that this can happen day to day? That we are, if we do have a vision that this person, we're an employment first state, right? So we have a vision that maybe this 4-year-old is someday going to have a competitive integrated job in the community. How are we thinking about the choices that they're making, the routines that they have throughout the day, the chores that they might need to complete with or without support, with or without formal services, with or without other elements of the integrated STAR in order to make that possible, so that we are laying that foundation and paving the way towards that positive life vision of this person having a good job that they like when they're an adult. And then getting us to school age, just more examples for you to chew on of where daily life and employment shows up. So the concept of least restrictive environment in special education is about school age students spending as much time as possible with students that don't experience disabilities. And that is directly connected to our vision as a state and perhaps a family's vision of someone working a competitive integrated job in the future, of living in the community alongside neighbors and friends and community members that don't experience disability, who they spend time with throughout the day, social skills that they're developing, technology that they may need to access in school that might also benefit them in other parts of life. Having the conversation about what you want to be when you grow up. Career day at school, where all students hopefully have the opportunity to be asked what they want to do and to show up, dress up, and kind of explore what that could look like and for their future. And then whatever their after school routine looks like. So those routines, skills, and experiences that are happening at all of these life stages, paving the way towards this life domain kind of evolving over time. And then transition age. I think these two are a little bit more concrete when we think about daily life and employment. Maybe these are the two age groups that we automatically think about. Our transition age youth who are maybe in a transition program, thinking about college or other experiences, other post-secondary experiences, getting a job or volunteering in their community, learning some more independent skills at home. So maybe some more contributions toward dishes and laundry and meal preparation, having some more ownership for themselves as to what constitutes a good day and a bad day. And that might be a concept that's also familiar to those of you who have experience with person-centered thinking. And then of course, in adulthood, the skills and interests that we develop in that stage of our life, which is a pretty long one, job changes. How many of you here today are in the same job that you started out in, that are still in your first job, Most of us have changed over the years. So that's another element of this domain for that life stage. And then of course your income and benefits and how that all intersects with other things that are important to you in your life. I want to explore next the social and spiritual domain. Just as a reminder, this is thinking about friends and leisure activities, personal networks, faith communities, and ask you to either raise your hand so I can call on you, or Carrie can call on you, or type in the chat. What are some experiences during these stages of life, early childhood and adulthood, where social and spiritual domains can show up? And you don't have to be thinking about this for service planning or in your formal role, but even for your own family or even your own life experiences.
See, I see playgrounds, sports, religious schools, birthday parties, understanding your place in the world. And if I don't see your hand, feel free to jump in. Forming relationships, walks in the neighborhood, finding out who you are.
About Girl Scouts, Cub Scouts. Summer camp, yeah. Great. What about old friends and new friends when you're transitioning into adulthood, for yourself or for folks that you support who experience intellectual or developmental disabilities? Dating, marriage, having children, exploring your interests, expanding your interests to not just yourself, but maybe a partner and family members, children in your life, participating in a faith community, maybe civic engagement, maybe you run for school board or city council or some advisory group in that adulthood stage. All things to think about for yourself and for the folks that you support. Same idea. I would love to hear your thoughts on how advocacy shows up. So that citizenship and advocacy domain, if we're thinking about life holistically, where we're not just thinking about health and safety, we know that health and safety is important and it always will be. But if we're also thinking about other areas of a person's life, including citizenship and advocacy, what are some experiences that show up during the stages of early childhood and transition for citizenship and advocacy? Again, I'd love to see some ideas in the chat, or feel free to raise your hand.
So many good ideas in the chat. Growth and understanding, team sports, summer camps, YWCA, church groups, identifying with others, cultural or otherwise, riding the bus, learning that you can say no, parents who advocate, college, working, choosing your own shower curtain. It's very important.
That is important. I remember choosing my first shower curtain.
Falling in love, saving for a car, moving out from parents. Oh, and there's choosing your own shower curtain. Love it. Selflessness, broader understanding of the world outside of your bubble, queer youth groups, definitely. Coffee shops and bars, community events, lots of great stuff.
Yes, thank you so much.
Developing your own intuition.
Thank you. And now to bring this home to kind of think about our work and think about our supporting people through the planning process. What are some ideas that come to mind, either in the citizenship and advocacy domain, the social and spiritual domain, where you might actually, bring this into conversation during the individual support plan process? What could that look like? Thinking about desired outcomes, resources available to someone. So how could, I'm restating the question for Genevieve. We often think about what someone wants to do with their life over the course of the next year when we're thinking about the individual support plan. And that big, broad question can be intimidating and can be hard for people to answer. And then we're also really good at asking questions about health and safety. We of course have to make sure that someone is safe where they are, that they have access to the health care that they need, that we are mitigating any risks that different assessments told us were important to mitigate, that we needed to address through supports or services. But what about thinking of citizenship and advocacy, of social and spirituality? How do we write desired outcomes or think about what desired outcomes might look like in those domains?
You know, while people are putting some ideas in the chat, it strikes me that, you know, even just that question, can you restate the question? I think sometimes there's this idea that we ask people what they want, what are your goals, and they just are going to know. But citizenship and advocacy, that domain of life, is partly about life experiences that teach you can make choices. And life experiences that teach you it's okay to ask for things and then learn if you like them and want more of them or don't want them ever again. And I think it's interesting to think about life domains as a way to restate that question of what someone wants or what someone's life looks like right now, what's going on for you these days, right? Well, how is advocacy showing up in your life? Like, how are you feeling like a leader? How do you want to show up as a leader? It's interesting to think about how the domains could be used just to restate the question of helping someone think about what their goals might be.
Thank you. Driver's permits, self-defense classes, after-school church program, sure. And then what is it going to take to get there, right? So what I want, and then what do I need to make that possible?
There was what and who makes a person smile, makes that person smile.
Church, social groups, getting to know who their neighbors are, yes, but and talking about the domains, and not, we don't have to use that word. That's not the most family friendly word, right? And again, this framework is about taking on these concepts and principles and making them your own, making them work for you, making them work for the families that you work with. But thinking about areas of life can make the planning and goal setting a lot more accessible, a lot more concrete, and can open up a lot of doors and new ideas. Okay, thank you. So how we meet needs. So once we understand, right, a person's life stage, what they want or envision in those various areas of life, those life domains, according to their context, their community, their culture, how do we meet their needs? What do they have available to them that supports them in pursuing that vision for a good life, according to their life stage and in each part of their life? The purpose of formal services, as you all know, and the roles that you play supporting people and accessing them, is not to replace all other types of support a person may need, is not to be the biggest and only source of support that a person has. Some people, depending on their needs, depending on their context, depending on these other areas of the integrated star, are going to need more green than others. And they may need that for longer than others. And that's okay. And that's not bad. But it's all, this framework is about making sure that whatever someone's needs are, we're not off balance. We're not forgetting other critical areas of support. And we're recognizing that all of these things work together, that we can use one color, one category of support to leverage other categories of support. And we can lean on other skills and strategies in order to make that happen. So I want all of you to think for yourself, how does this look for you? What types of support do you have in your life? We all need support, whether we experience a disability or not. We all have support needs in our life. We all need technology to some degree. Many of us way more the last 19 months than ever before in our lives. We all need community and relationships. We all have some kind of eligibility specific support. Maybe it's about the health plan that we're on. Maybe it's other things that we qualify for based on something unique about us or where we live. And we all have personal strengths, gifts, and talents.
I think a light bulb went off for me during the pandemic on the eligibility specific part of this, because if you have all of your work done in that area, I think people take for granted that it will always be there, but we learned during the pandemic that it wasn't. Special education was gone. People couldn't find people that could come into their house and help support them there. That was gone. Community, all that work people had been doing to try to get out into the community and into their neighborhood, public transportation, all that was gone. So I think it's a really good way to think about, if one of these were taken away, are the rest of them there to help fill in the gaps? And just to not, now we know that we could lose access to the eligibility specific services that we've counted on for so long. And I think that's been part of what's been so hard about the past couple of years.
And I feel like it's also been this kind of incredible case study in leveraging one point to fill in the others. I come at this work from the place of advocacy. I've worked for the council for a long time. That's kind of what we do, right? Is we advocate for things to be different. And for years and years and years, the advocacy was focused on how do we help connect people with technology? And then the pandemic happened, right? And a lot of systems change happened really quickly, trying to connect people with technology. And then we all were in this place, continue to be in this place of how do we leverage technology to help us maintain relationships? How do we leverage technology to help us maintain access with our services we're eligible for? How do we leverage technology to continue to access community resources so that the community infrastructure doesn't collapse, right? You saw restaurants using online ordering and delivery. You saw clothing stores doing, Facebook sales. You saw Zoom and FaceTime with grandparents who never would have tried that before, right? You saw virtual doctor's appointments and virtual appointments with case managers. We've seen virtual direct support professional support with people. And so we've had to think about how one point of the star doesn't exist by itself, but exists to help us access and amplify the others, right? And how amazing, really, that the speed in which that happened and changed. And to think about how dynamic it could be to helping people establish and really feel that safety net of a colorful life, how quickly we could get there if we were able to do the same thing and think about every interaction that we have with another person is an opportunity to use the green. We live in the green. Let's use the green to grow and amplify and identify all of the other colors in their life. It doesn't have to be you have purple, so you can't have green there. It can be, how do we use green to grow what's in your purple?
And how do we thrive, right? How do we avoid, not just avoid crisis, as Beth shared earlier, when maybe we have just so much of one thing that then goes away because something changes about that thing or about us personally, that we find ourselves in crisis. How can we think beyond that, the immediate needs, the crisis that we're all living in right now? So much of our work is putting out fires right now. But how can we move towards a place where we're leveraging all of these different colors so that we have balance, so we're not stuck in one place, so we don't feel like things are out of control, and we have some of that safety net that Beth alluded to earlier to help transition us into a next stage of life, to help transition us into a new experience that we might be having, or to new supports, to a new place to live, to new relationships, to new technology, right? So when we have only one type of support, a colleague of ours likes to compare it to standing on one foot. We can do that for a while. Most of us can do that for a little while, but eventually we fall over. And when we have more legs to stand on, when we have more balance in the way we look at how we're supported in our own lives, and the people that we work with are supported, we can rest at ease. We can get a little bit more comfortable. And when we're comfortable and when we're safe, then we're in a much better place to start dreaming for the future, to start making new plans, taking safe risks, right? And really starting to think about our lives in a different way. So how do we get there? Beth, do you want to share a little bit about what you do want?
So we're back to this vision we shared earlier, right? People exist. All humans exist within the context of family as they define it, and a community where they live. And we often exist in this place where services someone is eligible for because they hold the eligibility. The services wrap around the individual with good intent and can separate that individual from their context. This set of circles on the right is where we want to go, right? We want people to thrive within the context of their lives. And we want integrated supports. We want colorful lives, colorful safety nets of support in all aspects of that context. We want those integrated supports there for the person. We want their family to have that same safety net of support. We want the communities in which people live to have access to these safety nets of support, because when our context is strong, we are strong. People exist within context. We are constantly influencing the people and places around us and being influenced by the people and places around us. There is tremendous opportunity and power in starting to look at integrated supports existing wherever, whenever they need to, so that people can accumulate these dynamic life experiences that help them end up somewhere they want to be, that they can identify with support what they need in all three buckets to be successful in that, what they need in order to envision more possible solutions to the challenge they identify, and then map and grow any and all of those 5 kinds of support that can help us. They're the how that can help us meet those needs that we identify, how we succeed, because we all need support to succeed.
And I'll add, from a systems perspective, where we're headed, we are not there yet in that third icon that with integrated supports that are just beautifully leveraged and meeting the needs of people and families and communities. But that is the intentional journey that we are on right now as a system, in partnership with advocates, in partnership with the community, knowing that a systems only solution is not a solution. That really is about integrated supports and people in context of community and culture and family. So some of the projects that you might have heard of that are intentionally attempting to infuse the principles of the LifeCourse framework, not necessarily the tools, not necessarily the terminology, but these big ideas that we have talked about today are the individual support plan redesign project. And that is a number of years away from you seeing the fruits of that work, but that is really about how we infuse the principle of trajectory, of the 3 buckets, of a good life, of integrated supports that address someone's life stage and life domain into our planning process so that we can have more natural conversations. We can build plans that make sense in a real life context without adding another packet to fill out or another form, right? That is not the goal. The goal is how are we infusing? How are we embedding? How are we making the system needs match the person's needs, right? And the family's needs. And then also you might have heard of the Blueprint Project, which is really about the structure and function of case management and how we can, again, think about infusing the principles of the LifeCourse framework to improve and to elevate case management, because the service of case management itself is so critical to leveraging those other areas of support. Case management itself is that green, right? It's an eligibility specific service, but it's not just about connecting people to other eligibility specific services. It's also, it plays such a critical function in connecting people to the other colors of the star. And the Blueprint Project is how can we make that easier? How can we make that more natural? How can we build a system that enhances and supports that so it's possible? And we're almost out of time, so I'm going to take us to our closing slide here where you have some contact information to learn more. Carrie, who is here today with us and has shared and helped us with the chat moderation, is moving into the role of co-leading this community of practice as I transition into my current role at ODDS. And then Emily Wild-Turner of the council and Riley Newport at the council are also really great contacts and co-leaders of the community of practice for you. If you want to learn more about the LifeCourse framework, if you want to get involved with conversations that are happening, organic conversations about how to use the LifeCourse framework, or if you're seeking more training, just more information, these are folks that can help you get there. And I will email this slide deck out to everyone here today so that you have this information and the resources that we discussed. And with that, we have about a minute.
I just wanted to say thank you to everyone and acknowledge that my name is not up here, not because I am not available to you all and continuing to be available to the department, but just because I'm transitioning out of the council. So Emily and Riley will be there in partnership with Carrie. I'm really excited about what we're seeing in chat and that this resonated for people. Again, I just am grateful for your time today. I apologize that we weren't able to set aside time for questions and a lot of interaction. So I do hope that you all feel welcome to send those questions and engage in these conversations so that today can be more than a one-off opportunity for some information.
Thank you all so much. Thank you for everything you're doing lately and for being here and giving us 90 minutes of your day. We appreciate you, and I'm gonna end this presentation, but we hope to see you this afternoon and next week for more sessions. Thank you.